All right, continuing with this text as image exercise, this tutorial is going to go over how to work with two different type tools. So we have area type and then type on a path tool, which are both very useful, especially when you are dealing with exercises or projects that require you to only use text in your images. So that is one of the requirements of this project. And I just wanted to show people a couple of different options for creating variation when you're working within the confines or the restrictions of this assignment. I'm telling people, you can't use any shapes or any other images. You're only working with text and text objects. But remember, you can work with scale, and that's actually going to be one of the requirements, is that you do have some kind of shift in the scale and the position of these different texts. So you can remember that not only can you work with making letters very large, all these letters are symbols and they have these visual aesthetics, and essentially they are the simple to semi-complex shapes, but you also have all the punctuation that's available to you. So don't forget about things like periods or commas or question marks. So these are all things that you can use to create shape and to build your images. So these are all open to be used as components because they all are text components, but you have to remember that you're staying within the actual font. So you can't go to Wingdings or you can't use some emoji font and get more complex illustrations, but you are able to work within the font and then the regular alphabet and also all the punctuation and different symbols that are available within that specific font that is required for this project. So just wanted to give people a couple of reminders of that. And then I also wanted to show people and just remind people that I keep saying people because it's written here, but also because I'm talking to all of you, that you can select text objects in ways that you can select other shape objects or line objects. So the selection tool is your friend, that hotkey of V. When you are working within the text input area, that is where you definitely want to get used to using that control or command click outside of the area in order to be able to end or to complete the input of text, because when you are working with text, if you use V, which is what you can do when you're using the pen tool, for example, you just end up typing V. So you do need to hold down Command on a Mac or Control on a Windows machine and then click anywhere else in order to end that text input. And you can also use the selection tool to select multiple objects. And I'm going to bring this up a little bit. For instance, people, each of these is its own piece of line type that I have entered in. So each letter is its own text object. So if I wanted to select all of these, I could just drag the selection tool to create that selection square. I can use the align functions. So I can align the tops of these, I can distribute these. And I just did that by going up to those align processes up here on the top menu bar, which happens when you have multiple objects selected. You can also always get to it over here if you have it, if it's docked in your right-hand toolbar, and access it that way. So I'm just going through, just showing people quickly how you're able to manipulate these text objects the same way that you are able to manipulate different shape objects or objects that you've drawn. You can also use the lasso tool, and this is something that it seem like we're using more to select things, this or this white arrow. And I want to really clarify that when you're using both of these tools, the direct selection tool and the lasso tool, they will select only points sometimes of objects. So if you somehow do not select the entire object, you'll just select a point, And then what will happen in that situation is if you're trying to move that object, but you've only selected a couple of points of that object, you'll end up distorting it. So when you're doing basic transformations and selections, you always want to use the selection tool. And you can use that by dragging, or if you hold down Shift and then click on multiple objects, it will include all those different objects in their selections. So just some reminders. And now I want to talk about area type and the area type tool. So we already have been working with one kind of area type, and that's when you hold down that type tool and you drag out a rectangle to place your type into, as I've done here. But what happens if you want to put your type into something, a shape that isn't just a rectangle? And you could actually do that with Illustrator. So I'm going to draw out a circle first, and I'm just going to make it a perfect circle. And then in order to turn this circle into a shape or a container to put text into, I just have to click on it with the area text or area type tool. So I'm going to go up here to area type. It's also underneath that T. If you hold down on the T in the toolbox, I'm going to select it. And then anywhere within this shape, I'm going to click. Just kidding. Anywhere on this path, I'm going to click. And now I've created this, I've turned this circle, it's disappeared. The path still exists. And so the path is that defining boundary of that shape. It has disappeared because I was just using that as an intermediate shape to then fill text into. And the reason why it's a little bit hard to see is because if you go up here and you look at the characters, my font is set to be 122 points, so it's pretty big. So I can go here and change it to 10 points, but it doesn't extend the lorem ipsum because that's just a weird little default entry. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to select this, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to go back to that area type, and even though it's not visible, you can, when you cursor over it, you'll still probably see the outline, and you can also click on it. And so let me show you an example of this, because I know this it can be really, so looking at that, you're saying, oh, it disappeared, I must have to make another one. And in most likely it's still there, and you can, by putting your cursor over it, you will see it show up. And then you can also use the selection tool to select it. And then if you ever have totally lost your text areas and your text boxes, then you can always press Command A to select everything, and that will kind of show you, okay, I see that the circle is here. So I'm going to go over here and select this again. I'm going to select just my type tool, because now that this is a area type and defined by this circle, I can just click in here and I get that cursor that comes up, and then I'm going to paste. And so now I have pasted in all of the font, all of the text that was here, and the circle is too small to hold it all, but I want to show what happens when you do have text, and when you enter in text into a shape or to an area that is too small to contain all that text. This little plus sign will come up, and I can't really make it bigger, but you'll get this little plus arrow. What that means is there's text that you're not seeing. It just extends beyond the boundaries of whatever text box or text shape you're inputting it into. So there's a couple ways to deal with that. One way, if you know that you want the shape to stay the same size, but you want all that text to be visible, is you can just select the text object in this case, and then you can make the font smaller. Another thing that you can do is, if you, for instance, don't mind, you want to make the circle larger and you want to keep the font the same size, is if you press Shift, I'm pressing Shift and just dragging out the bounding box. That's just to maintain that aspect ratio, the perfect circle. That will extend the shape object and without changing the size of the font. So this is how you are able to input text into an area that isn't just a box. And then once you're working with area text, and text that's within an area, whether it's a rectangle or a circle, you can then start dealing with other aspects and other properties of the text because you're essentially working with it in paragraph form. So I'm going to go over a couple of these different options here. So the paragraph panel is, you get some of the most popular, most used properties up here in this top menu bar. If you go over to the character panel and then go to that little paragraph symbol, you can get more. And what this allows you to do is this allows you to change the alignment of the text, not the alignment of the text object. So you can go from center to align right, align left, justify. And you can also do things like change the line height and work with things like hyphenation and stuff. So probably the ones that you're probably going to be using the most are things like line height. And so this will make the space between the lines bigger. And then you can also experiment a little bit with the hyphenation. But mostly you're probably going to be wanting to work with these ones at first because these are kind of the most basic. And then let's go into a couple more of these character properties. So you have the style and you have the size, and that's all over here. You can also work with the space between the letters, and that's what this little VA button is, and or icon is. And so if you change that, it'll spread the letters out more. And then this will change the height between the letters. So I'm going to put, let's see, 100. So you can think about this as like double spacing when you're in a regular word processing. And you would just base it on whatever the font size is. So it will usually put in some kind of default. It will always put in a default, and it's usually a little bit bigger than what the point size of the text is. And that's because if it was smaller, then you would have the lines of text overlapping one another. But if you're trying to estimate like a double space, then you can just double the font size. So I'm going to put there. So now I have almost like a double space in the spacing here. So these are all more advanced ways of fine-tuning your text and also creating the sense of transformation in your text. So the last thing I want to show, or actually last thing I want to show with this particular type of text is how you can actually link these two different areas of text together. So I'm going to create another smaller circle that I want the leftover text that's in this text area to flow into. So what I'm going to do is I've just created this circle. Now I'm going to turn this into a type area, and then I'm going to come over here. I'm going to select, let me zoom in a little bit. I'm going to select the area type that has this text that is actually going past the boundaries. I'm going to select that tiny little box, and then I'm going to go over here, and when I put my cursor over this area of text, this lorem ipsum, which is just, it could be invisible. If this text wasn't here, this would still be happening. And I see that little link button has come up. See how the cursor changes to that little link icon. So what this is saying is you're linking this spillover into this area. So when I click the mouse, once my cursor has that little link showing, then it automatically extends the rest of the text into that area. And I can see here that, it's still overflowing, but that's okay. Oh, and it actually kept the lorem ipsum, which is kind of annoying. So I would have to go through and delete all that. So I guess lesson learned, you want to delete that lorem ipsum if it's coming up for you. And if you're on CS6, it's probably not, because I think this is a pretty new feature. It's a little bit annoying sometimes. All right, so now I have both of these, and I can move this wherever I want. And these little blue guides, those things aren't going to print. It's just to tell you, oh, this area of text is extended beyond this boundary, and it's linking to this area of text. So that is a couple of things you can do with areas of text. And don't forget, you can overlap things, and you can change the order of things the same way that you can with shapes. So I just did that by the shortcut of changing, bringing that trapped text object to the front, which is Command Shift and then the bracket. To send this to the back, I would select it, Command Shift and then the left bracket. And then you can also do those things if you go up to Object, Arrange, and then you have these different options. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about in this video is type on a path. So I had these little letters here to show how I used to do this before I learned about this really amazing time-saving tool. Let's say I wanted these to go along a curve, and I wanted not only do I want the word itself to be on a curve, but I want the letters to be following a curve. Okay, so how do I do that? The best way to do that is not manually, as we've learned time and time again with Illustrator, but is to actually use one of the processes that's built into Illustrator. So I want people to go along a path, and I have this idea, I just want it to go in a simple curve. So I'm going to first use the pen tool to create a curve or a path that I want my text to follow. So I'm going to click once, and then I'm going to go over here to where I want that midpoint of that curve to be. I'm going to click, but then hold down the mouse to extend those handles. And then I have a curve that seems about right. And then I'm going to move my cursor over and then click again. And then I'm done with that. So I want to finish this pen tool, so I'm going to hold down Command and then click on the artboard. And now I have this curve, but it's showing a fill. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to go up to the color palette in the toolbar, and I'm just going to flip it so that now it doesn't have a fill associated with it, it just has an outline. I'm just doing this for people to see. I'm not doing this because you have to. You can actually, you can set text along a filled object as well. And either way, it will make it, it doesn't retain any of the visual characteristics of that path object once you apply the text to that path. So in order to do this, in order to apply the text to the path, I'm going to select that path that I've made. I'm going to go to my Type on a Path tool. I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to click on this path. And now it has put in more lorem ipsum. When it's highlighted like this, all you have to do is press one letter on the keyboard in order to delete it all. So I'm going to write out people. All right, and now I have this on a path. So it's following this curve. I don't have to do it manually, which would involve a lot of rotation and probably experimentation and frustration on my part. And on top of this, now, if I want to change or if I want to edit this path, I can actually do that, and it will change the path of the text. So I'm holding down this anchor. I'm using the direct selection tool to pull up these handles, which is this white arrow, not to be confused with the selection tool. And so you can see how you're able to edit not only the path, but you're also able to change the text. And so since this is line text and this is an area text, when I'm changing the size of this path this way, using the bounding box, I'm also transforming the text. So there are a few different options, and you have ways of changing the way that this type on a path is applied. The easiest way to do that is to select that type on a path. If you go up to Type and then Type on a Path, you can go into Type on a Path options. And then it brings up this little dialog box, and this allows you to change a lot of the different properties. Make sure that you click this preview, or else you're not able to see actually what the changes are you're applying. But this will change the effect. So you can do some different things depending upon what type of effect you have applied to the Type on a Path tool. And you can always go through and change these after you have made that after you've input the type and after you've made that path. So I like rainbow. The baseline, so aligned to the path, this is saying what part of the text you want to be aligned to that path. The baseline is where all the capital letters sit. The ascender is the lowest part, or sorry, the highest part of any letters. and then the descender is the lowest part of the letter. So things like lowercase letters like G's and J's, those are going to actually, that's where it'll line up where those would fall. And then, and here, let me, oh, and then you can also do center, and that'll line it along the center. And then you can also always go in and change the word too. So in order to do that, you want to double click on the text area of that, or on the text that's within that type on a path, or you can just select the type tool and then click anywhere within that path. Purple. All right, so those are the different ways to continue to work with text, and then to continue to distort text and transform text. And hopefully this is starting with helping give some people some starting points in terms of developing an image that's just made of text. So working with the ways that the text is flowing, the shape of blocks of text, and also working with the scale of the text and the other text objects that are within your overall image.